Stereotypes. In this video, I'm going to speak about some of the stereotypes about Russians that I encountered in my conversations with gentlemen worldwide while dating online. My name is Nelly and this is the wind from the north delivered to you straight from Russia. Let's go for it. Honestly speaking, before entering this online dating about 5 years ago, I didn't realize that people would still trust these old-fashioned stereotypes to be true. But since I got involved into searching for a partner, both locally and internationally, I had so many meetings, so many romantic dates with interesting people around the globe. And to my utter confusion, I realized these stereotypes about Russians, which should have died about 20 years ago, even more, they are still vile, very persistent. So today I decided to speak about some of them, to give you a hint on what you shouldn't really think about Russians, unless you want to seem a little bit old-fashioned. So imagine my first online date, one of the firsts, I would say. I was still pretty nervous about how it would go, and it was in the middle of the summer, so we were supposed to meet with a gentleman from Switzerland, and I put a glass of water just beside my laptop to have a sip of water if I needed. And in the middle of the conversation, I just did that, okay? This glass of water, and I sipped on it. And that very moment, I heard the most irritating question ever, okay? If you thought this question was whether I was drinking vodka, yeah, you're right. That was exactly the question. So what can I say here? First thing, which is immediately clear, is that the guy simply doesn't know how Russians drink vodka. And we never do that out of this, huge classes, even though you sometimes might see it in films. But this is the wrong way, okay? So we drink our vodka in these little tiny shots, and we never sip on it, okay? We gulp this at once. Like this. And after that, we make sure to chase it with something, okay? A pickle, a piece of ham, something. All right, so that is the right way. Okay, and I hope you understand this is not vodka. This is water in my glass. Secondly, vodka, it's an evening drink. And it's normally meant for a company of good friends or acquaintance. Sometimes it's a good start for a new acquaintance. But I don't know who a person has to be to drink vodka on a first date. Okay, it's such a rare case. I cannot recall any in my whole dating experience here in Russia. Thirdly, and this might sound a bit discriminative for you, probably, but vodka in Russia is considered a male drink. So it's a drink for men mostly. In my childhood, I remember in the Soviet times, women who drank vodka, they would be frowned upon because this is not a good thing for a lady to do, okay? So a wine used to be a more female drink. Women can drink vodka, of course, on some special occasions like weddings, funerals, great parties like New Year. Next point, for the recent 20 years, there has been a very steady trend here in Russia towards sobriety. And these days you can find more and more young people who refuse to take any alcohol, not to mention vodka. For example, according to World Health Organization, in the rating of the most drinking countries, Russia keeps the 16th place after such countries as France, Belgium, Germany, Portugal, Spain, Czech Republic. By the way, this was brought from Czech Republic. They tell me this is Bohemian. Fifth point about vodka is that it is not even the most popular drink here. If we speak about alcohol, the most favorite drink is absolutely beer. Yeah, and I know many people brew beer in their dachas somewhere outside the big cities. Of course, the quality sometimes leaves much to be desired, and to my taste, none of the Russian beers can compare with the tastes of some Belgian brands, for example. But this is only my taste. Beer is unisex, so both ladies and gentlemen love it. And if we speak about non-alcohol beverages, the famous one here is definitely tea. So where does this stereotype about Russians originate from? I believe this goes back to the times when the Iron Curtain fell and the whole world witnessed the situation in post-Soviet Russia. A lot of people were crushed. They were depressed by the constant economic crisis, the aggressive government. They were poor, they were hopeless, and most of them were looking for a way out on the bottom of the bottle, as the Russian saying has it. But within these last 3 decades, the situation has changed. Our minds aired, our self-esteem recovered. We kick-started the private business sector and it's developing. We reinvented traveling. And all this has a very favorable effect on people's minds. And in big cities, today, you can hardly find a heavily drinking person, honestly. Of course, in the smaller towns, industrial zones, and small dying villages, the situation might be not that rosy because people have less opportunities. They are limited in their chances to find a purpose. So this can be still a very sad story for them, unfortunately. And there is one more reason for this drastic change in drinking preferences with Russian people. This is suggested by my mom, and she has witnessed the decline of the Soviet Empire. So she says that back in the days, in the Soviet period, people couldn't afford to buy a car. To this fact, we owe one of the best public transport system in the world, on the one hand, and a lot of drinking people on the other hand, because they could have their drink, take a trolley and get back home. Nowadays, every household has a car, at least one. Yeah, and our laws, they prohibit to drive even after 1 glass of wine. And for that reason, maybe a lot of people are choosing not to drink. The second thing, and this one is particularly driving me up the wall, this is that Russian ladies are going to date internationally because, they are so poor here. Russia is a miserable country. Men here are absolutely incompetent and incapable of making any decent living. So these ladies are trying to escape, trying to solve their financial problems at the expense of more prosperous gentlemen. The sad story about all this is that we Russian women are in a bit of a conundrum here in this department of relationships. Statistically, there are less men than women here in Russia. And for example, this very fresh data by the early 2022, there were 1,151 women to each 1,000 of men. And I remember from my childhood this old Soviet movie. In that movie, there was a song with these exact lines about statistics, and I'm gonna sing it to you right now in Russian. Потому что на 10 девчонок по статистике 9 ребят. Exactly that song, 100 years old, okay? So that's it. Of course, finding a date when you're 20 makes no problem at all. And I would say that it is still pretty normal here in Russia to get married very early. I myself got married at 21, which is childhood. But still, we're doing it. But when you hit 35, you find yourself among all these divorced people, and you realize that ladies, they are willing to get remarried, so they are looking for a second marriage. Gentlemen, on the opposite, they are reluctant to do that because they have been there, they know the drill, okay, they value their freedom, they're trying to make up for the younger years. They are not into long-term relationships. On the other hand, the European gentlemen, by this age of 35 and 40 maybe, for the first time in their lives, they understand that they feel mature enough for a long-term relationship, for commitment. No wonder this big army of Slavic ladies, they rush into the international dating. But I hope you understand, the reason is not that, they're trying to find a daddy for themselves. Absolutely not. Russian ladies, they are not gold diggers, okay? They are gold enough as they are. Of course, you can find some very materialistic, very cynical people among these ladies, but isn't that a sign of the times that we're living in? I'd say international, like universal sign. Don't you agree? All right, I'll tell you another story, and this time it's about an American gentleman. I have very warm memories about this period of my life because we got pretty close very soon and very naturally, got on the same wavelengths and had a lot of great time together online. And at some point we realized it's time for us to meet offline. So we decided on his trip from America to Russia. And all the preparations started, his visas, reservations, trip plannings. And one day he told me that after his mom had discovered that he is planning on a trip here to Russia, she asked him to make a will. And at first, I didn't really understand it. It wasn't a joke. And then, in all the seriousness, I understood that my country seems to be so dangerous for that American lady that she is recommending her son to settle all the legal affairs before coming here. To be fair, I am living in a city which used to have the reputation of the most gangster cities in Russia 25 years ago. So there is an automobile plant here and a couple of huge chemical plants in this city. So when in the 90s the Soviet Union collapsed, power was changing hands. And it was time of shootouts, of gangster squabbles, of utter lawlessness everywhere. Actually, the whole country was going through a very tough period of time there. And we still are calling this decade of our history as the wild, roaring 90s. This is all true. But it's been 30 years since then, hasn't it? People don't shoot in the streets anymore here, even in the most criminal city in Russia. And Honestly, I cannot remember the last time I saw a street fight. Of course, there are places in which you should never go, especially at night, unless you're looking for some adventure. But tell me, is there a country in which they don't have such places? Okay, so what about my American guest, you would ask? If he was here with me, he would keep me honest, I think. He felt pretty safe. So he was walking on the streets alone in the evenings. He drove a cab alone without my assistance, even though he didn't speak Russian at that time. And cab drivers here, they do not know a word in English. So everything was all right. And after this trip, 10 days here in Russia, he got safely back home to the United States. So, my dears, from the very heart of used to be bandit Russia, my recommendation for you is to forget once and for all. Forget this outdated attitude towards Russia as the most dangerous country for foreigners. If you're coming here as a tourist, stick to common sense, take some usual precautions, and you will be 100% fine. A little disclaimer now. I do realize how unconvincing and maybe inappropriate my words sound today amidst this rumbling roar of the war. But no matter how irrelevant this video might seem, I am taking the risks and publishing it right now. And I'm doing this in the hope that you, just like me, can separate governments from the people. I know this is easier said than done today, but I'm taking this video of mine as a little contribution to this process of people understanding people. Thank you. All right, that was my short list of the most irritating stereotypes about Russians, and I hope I managed to debunk them for you. If you have any stereotypes that you still believe in, or maybe you heard some funny stereotypes about Russians and you want me to discuss them, please leave a comment below. Thank you for watching, and thank you for being with me. See you around.